we want students to recognize and solve equal group problems. They should also be able to recognize that there are several paths to the correct answer. And we said that we want students to work in whatever way they choose to find the correct solution to a multi-step equation. We want them to honor and learn from their fellow students' methods in solving the task. So, what do we think?
Check mark.
Right. Check.
Right. Is it important that they use those words? They wouldn't.
They
have
would
to
not.
say
They
equal
would not
numbers.
verbalize
Right.
it
They
this
wouldn't
way.
verbalize. Right.
This is teacher speak.
Yeah.
They would not describe it this way.
Right.
They speak into trainees.
And so it's interesting that we tossed around a lot about multi-step equations. We talked a lot about algebra because we are, a team.
Right.
We range from fourth grade to high school. So it'll be interesting to see how you all approach it. Or
Yeah,
have
so could
approached
you
it.
probably say how you would scaffold it in fourth grade, for example?
I know for sure I'd have to start with like a problem with smaller numbers and kind of work through it. I have in my class I have a range of from ESOL level 2, all the way up to student on 11th
So
grade
beats
level.
are gonna help here.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to use the counters to make sure, and then we've talked about different ways to solve it, but I like how you had it out for them to see it. But I think if I give them something to start off with, like a kind of a place to start, I think they can get there, but just outright giving them the problem.
You need like a step 1 problem, and this would be the step 2 problem.
Right, and then I also, my students are sitting in Kagan groups, so I have 1 high, 1 low, and 2 mediums, and I'll probably keep it like that. If all my lows got together, like how your lows were able to come to, if my lows got together, so.
Oh, they may surprise you. For example, you said instead of 100 strawberries, if you make the problem for just 10, and something hands-on is right there, you're gonna do the trial and error very quickly, actually. So.
Yeah, so I'll probably try lower numbers and try to have them do it on their own to see how they do,
Yeah.
and then talk about it and then give them. But yeah, you're right. They do surprise me sometimes. Sometimes good.
Okay.
Always sometimes, but yeah.
So you are kind of teaching the lower, so fourth grade, and you're teaching the high end, the algebra.
Right.
So how would you scale this up?
I think that they should probably be able to at least explain it initially by themselves and their method for solving it. And then I would probably make sure that they were able, at the end, even the pre-algebra students by this time of year should be able to write the equation.
Would they graph it?
They can, at this point, they can.
Yeah.
They can.
They should be able to graph it. And they should, so aside from the equation, solving it equation-wise, solving it graphing-wise, they should be able to show me a third way.
Good. Okay. Interesting. Okay. And special ed, what did you do?
Well, we had talked about doing different, giving them, say, a chart to start them off with, like basically give them hints for methods to do it. I also thought my current 5th graders are very, very low. They're like 1st, 2nd grade level. And I would probably give them a hundreds chart, which kind of gives them a hint too, but they can start using counters, or actually I wouldn't use counters with them because most of them have executive functioning issues, so they'd end up all over. So I would give them something to mark it with in different colors to kind of highlight those groups for them. But there would have to be a lot of scaffolding. I'd probably have to be sitting with them the whole time and thinking through the metacognitive process with them and doing all of that. It's not something.
And would a
they do.
smaller number help in that class?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, starting with a smaller number would help.
I have another question for the group, just thinking, I thought it was cool how you just put the problem out and they started working. Does anyone feel like perhaps their group might need a little more setup in terms of the structure of the problem, reading, and like your group was able to pull out the important information? I saw a few students sort of playing with the 28 at first and they weren't sure what to do, huh?
They were highlighting
I
the
saw
important
Right, they were
information.
highlighting and underlining, I noticed.
I
that
saw
here
one of the
too.
kids in her notebook, she had something that was written out as cubes.
Yeah, I
Cubes.
copied that
Yeah.
down.
What is that?
Yeah.
Cubes, and I've seen it done a couple, different ways. That was kind of, I moved from North Carolina last year, and so that was something school-wide that we did, and it's just,
You're
Like,
supposed
like
to
circle the
numbers.
underline the
Okay,
important,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and so
okay.
it's just kind of, for those that tend to read a problem and just stare and not really, it helps them kind of pick out the important information, you know, cross out the not needed information. And we introduced at the beginning of the year, we haven't, they're just, I don't have many problems with those that just don't start, you know, that they'll start somewhere, it may not be where they need to be. But she did, I saw that she had put that.
Right, and I did notice too, several students.
I thought that was
started
great
monkeying
because,
problem.
for our kids who just don't, it would be great for any word problem, actually, whether they're in a group or not. It would really help the kids who have a hard time with word problems that contain language, not just, 2 + 3 =
Right.
5.
That sounds pretty
Because it will help them really emphasize what's important and what they really need to be looking at. For my class, we use Saxon, and it's not a pretty textbook. It's very verbal. There's not a lot of there's no color graphics in it. There's very few graphics in it unless you're teaching geometry or graphs or charts. So when you hand the kid a word problem, sometimes they just don't even know where to begin.
Right.
So
And that's where my question came from, does anyone feel like their students might need a little setup or some support?
I think a couple of my low 7th graders would. They would need, and I think that's why they balked at not solving it the day I put it on the board. My entire 7th grade class rejected it and didn't even try because they wanted to focus on studying for their final instead. And I think if I'd been able to take the time with them and set up the problem for them and make it fun, because I think it's great.
So you could bring
They-
strawberries to class.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that.
We did.
If I
Change
talked
it-
about a bunch of
Change it
different
to
ways to
M&Ms
open
and
M&M, oh,
M&Ms will be
that's
perfect, then they can finish and
yeah.
eat actually, so.
Jolly Ranchers.
So.
Yeah, when you get the correct solution, you can eat your
you
M&Ms.
eat your M&Ms,
That's
yeah.
right.
So they have to share on the table, so
That's
I
right.
know.
So it needed for them. It needed more structuring, more scaffolding than I was able to provide. But
But I think they were just, they knew that all of you were coming. They were just ready for it. They just
were
wanted to do
so
it, and so they
Yeah, they were so
didn't.
well behaved.
knowing there was
Such a
such
small
a
group.
large group of guests, normally when you have an observer, it's 1, maybe 2 people.
And that could
To
have
have
been incredibly
a large
disruptive.
group
if
like
were-
us.
They were very well behaved.
Yeah, a couple of them saw that I had my camera out to take pictures in case we want to put them in the slideshow later, and they're like,
I know.
I'm like, I'm not taking your picture, it's okay.
Well, this is our accreditation year, and so we had our accreditation year, so they're used to, we were collecting evidence.
So what do you teach?
I teach 5th grade, and I probably do it very similarly to you, but my group is scutchy this year, to say the least. So I would not have been able to, they work really well in groups, they do a lot of group work. I don't teach math, but everything else I do a lot of group work. So I would have had to cut the time much shorter for their independent work and their group work. But I think otherwise, I think they would have been able to handle it. But I know our whole school from 2nd grade up starts every math class with word problems as a warm-up.
I had an observation about the MLRG.
Yeah, let's get into it.
This is interesting because this is the first method I used to solve the problem when, we were supposed to all take the problem home and solve it. And the reason I did it that way is because of that earlier problem we had where there were leftovers.
Was it the stonemason one?
Not the stonemason one, the bike shop one.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
Bike shop one. And I would have never gone that way. I would have always gone algebraic first, but I was like, okay, there has to be significance to this leftover. And it's interesting because he never fully explained whether he got the significance. He said what he did,
Yeah.
but he never fully explained that he got the significance. So I wonder if a follow-up conversation would be,
Right.
why did this work?
Mhm.
Because I never
That's
got,
very true.
I never got the impression that he fully stood why it worked, he just knew it did.
Right.
And so that would be an interesting follow-up to see exactly, because he obviously has some natural number sense, he knew it was significant. But it would just be interesting to see how far it went, but also, you know, the idea of, could this work in other, or even the idea of just making them aware that every number that's available in the problem could have significance in terms of solving it. Because I know that's something that I've learned through going to the class and doing various problems, is that, oh yeah, well, there's a different starting point for this. So I think that this is something that as kids do it more and more, just like we've done it more and more in class, that it opens up your eyes to different ways to look at numbers and to look at math.
It was funny because when he first figured it out, I was there when he was explaining it to the group. And two of them were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I was totally lost. And I was like, you did what? I was trying to look at his paper. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so all of them copied it down. And so I think, again, working in groups is just, kids can talk to each other in different ways and how we talk to them. And so when he explained to them, they totally got it. And I just was.
And I wonder if like his numbers made sense because they got to the correct solution, or did like the structure of what he was doing make sense to them? I wonder if like, oh, it does make sense because all the numbers. Or like I said, it would be interesting to know like what made sense to
Yeah.
him,
Right.
right? Yeah, absolutely. I would love to know like how he arrived at doing
I
this
would-
one.
I wish I could tell you, but that's how many things are, yeah. Although he made a comment, he related it somehow to the stonemason question, cause he mentioned that to me, he was like, well, I remember on the stonemason, so I'm gonna have to go back and I wrote myself a note to ask him, you know, what connection he made there, how that.
And you know, that one there, with that group wrote, you know, is very important because that builds the structure for them to write an actual equation. All they had to do is put an X there and then they got the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
step,
They
you know,
do.
so.
That's what I thought she had at first. I thought she had 12x. And I was like, what? They can do that? And I realized it was just times.
Right.
But the fact that she's naming each one of them, that's
She
all,
shows
that's the,
a preliminary
That's right,
understanding of
understanding
housing
of, yeah.
variables.
and that's the number of students which could change, and now it's, and that's where the, you know, the X starts to come in.